Hi, welcome back. I am really glad that you're here. For this episode, I want to share three little things that can make a huge difference. And the focus for this is on the concept of having a reputation for being friendly. We're also going to talk about the concept of talking to strangers today. And I'll tell you how I feel about that and why I feel like it's actually crucial that we talk to strangers. We, meaning everybody, including my kiddos. Let's start by talking about the concept of having a reputation for being friendly. In my program, I used to teach this as having a reputation for being kind. And recently, I had a conversation with a student that I've been working with one-on-one, and he shared that he didn't want a reputation for being kind because the concept of kind came across to him as somebody who's easy to take advantage of. And I thought that was a really interesting perception. And I can absolutely see where he made that connection. And I also definitely feel like there's a difference between kind and friendly. I feel like there's a difference between those two. And while I'm not placing emphasis on one over the other, because I think they're both important, when it comes to making friends, if we don't have a reputation of being friendly, it's going to be difficult to make friends. So yes, we all want to have a reputation for being kind. There's a lot to be said for a reputation for being kind. But you can be kind and not be perceived as friendly. I actually saw, I don't remember, some random thing I was looking at on the internet about a week ago, and somebody was saying that they were comparing the East Coast and the West Coast in the US, and they were saying that, let me see if I can get this correct. I don't live on either one, so I don't want to say it incorrectly. But basically they were saying that on the West Coast, people are friendly but not kind. And on the East Coast, people are kind but not friendly. And the example, I don't remember the example they gave for the West Coast, but for the East Coast, the example they gave of being kind but not friendly is that someone, if say you're going down the stairs and you have a stroller, someone will walk up in front of you and grab the front of your stroller and help you walk it down the stairs. And then they'll walk off and you'll never see them again. So they might not ever say anything to you. There may be no interaction or engagement. They did something that was really kind, but there's no friendliness there. There's no conversation. There's no interaction. And I think the example from the West Coast about being friendly but not kind was kind of the opposite. It was somebody asking you how you're doing, having a conversation with you, but not acknowledging that you're really busy or not acknowledging that maybe you're carrying something that's too heavy. So they're concerned with being friendly and engaging in conversation, but not necessarily being kind and helpful. So I thought that was really interesting while I'm having these thoughts about my curriculum at Starfish Social Club and transitioning away from the concept of kind and more to the concept of friendly. And then having this conversation with the student I'm working with really reinforced that there is a difference between kind and friendly. And so again, I'm not leaving kind behind, but I really want to put more emphasis on the concept of having a reputation for being friendly. Because if our goal is to make friends, which is the goal of almost all of my students here at Starfish Social Club, if that's our goal, the priority would be having a reputation for being friendly. Because without that, we do not seem approachable. We do not seem likable. So that's why it's important for us to build a reputation for being friendly. When we perceive someone as friendly, we feel more comfortable around them. We are more willing to ask them for help if we need something. We're more willing to engage in a random conversation, and we're more likely to want to see that person again. So all these things have to do with being perceived as being friendly. This is awesome. I'll share with you a couple things that I do intentionally, and some of them are going to be things that I share in this episode, but well, I'll just jump into the first one and then I'll tell you what I do for this one. Let's also talk about the concept of strangers while we're at it. I am going to get on a big soapbox about the concept of stranger danger. I actually think the concept of stranger danger is very ill-informed and has negative consequences when it comes to socialization. We actually have a lesson in the curriculum that I teach the kids how to talk to strangers. There's a couple different reasons why I go against the grain on this one. I would never say this to a student at Starfish, but the reality is we are much more likely to find ourselves in a bad situation with somebody that we know versus somebody that we don't know. That's just the reality. Even if you think about your life, things that have happened to you that have been physically harmful, emotionally harmful, financially harmful, most often they happen at the hands of somebody that we know. When I think about my own life, one of the most challenging situations that's ever happened to me was someone who I had invited to live in my home with me and ended up causing all kinds of damage in my personal life for a year. There was a year where I was trying to undo things that had happened from this person that was living in my house. From strangers, I've had my vehicle broken into, I've had things stolen, property damage, things like that. Nothing that compares at all to the situation that I was in with this person that I knew. Even if you think about things like domestic violence, kidnapping, most forms of aggression are carried out by people that the victim knows. So again, I don't ever share this with the students. It would not be appropriate. But my point from adult to adult is that it's not strangers that are the biggest danger to our kids or to any of us. It's not strangers. Yes, there are absolutely situations and circumstances where people have been harmed by strangers. Absolutely. There's one on the news earlier this week where a child was kidnapped. Absolutely, by a complete stranger. Those are very much the exception. Very much the exception. If you think about most of the Amber Alerts that you see, those children are taken by someone who knows them. It is a non-custodial parent. It is a family member. It is somebody who knows them. So again, I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I really want to make the point that teaching our kids to be afraid of strangers is very counterproductive and definitely gets in the way of their ability to have social interactions and engagements. That being said, we have a lesson in the program where I teach the kids how to have an interaction with a stranger, because the reality of strangers is that strangers are just people we don't know. That's all that it is. It's just somebody we don't know. And I also make the point during this lesson that if everybody followed this expectation of not talking to strangers, we would not be able to talk to anybody that was not related to us. And I even take it so far to say, if we weren't allowed to talk to strangers, we wouldn't be born, because your mom and your dad would never have met. And so there would not be new babies being born, because moms and dads would not meet if we weren't allowed to talk to strangers. So yes, it's an extreme example of that, but it's the truth of that concept of not talking to strangers. A lot of times when people are in situations where they need help, we are going to ask a stranger. I just moved a couple of days ago from when I'm recording this episode, and I woke up the morning after I moved and my truck battery was dead, even though it was less than a year old. I spent the day talking to strangers and asking for help. I had to call and get roadside assistance to come out. I had to talk to them. I then had to drive to a dealership in a town I have never lived in before. I'm 8 hours away from where I've always lived. So lots of situations that day where I'm talking to strangers because I needed help. I needed a jump. I needed help at the dealership to get my battery replaced. I had to, share my paperwork about the warranty, all kinds of situations. And now that I'm in this new place that I've never lived before, everybody here is a stranger. Literally everybody here is a stranger. I don't know anybody here. As I'm recording this, I'm on my third day. So I've met some people randomly, but I can only think of one person that I've met that I know her and I know her name. Everybody else in this entire city is a stranger to me. And so can you imagine if I navigated throughout this city and followed that advice of stranger danger, don't talk to strangers? Man, this would be such a lonely time for me, because I know one person here. So that's my whole point about the damage that can be done when we teach our kids not to talk to strangers. And part of the lesson is that I remind the kids that we absolutely need to be safe and smart. We do not need to tell people we don't know what our name is if we choose not to. We do not need to tell people we don't know where we live or where we go to school, how old we are, anything like that. So this isn't, I'm not teaching kids to walk up to strangers and share personal information. What I am teaching them is how to say hello, how to be friendly. We can say hello and be friendly to absolutely anyone. So that's what I'm teaching my kids, is how to have a reputation for being friendly. And the thing about people we don't know is, because we don't know them, we are most likely not going to see them again. And so it's actually a great opportunity to practice being friendly, especially for our kids who are socially anxious, because we're not going to see this person again. So if we're concerned that we're going to say or do something stupid or weird, okay, we're not going to see this person again. It doesn't matter as much. So strangers are actually the ideal people to have this conversation, to practice these skills with. So all that being said, let me share the 3 things that go a really long way when it comes to having a reputation for being friendly. Number 1, smile. I know it sounds so basic, but think about that. Think about how much of a difference it makes if you are in a public place and you see 2 people. Maybe you are in a store and you need to know where something is. Maybe you're in a restaurant and you need to know where the restroom is. Maybe you need to ask somebody for help for something, and you see 2 people and you can tell that both of them could be able to help you, could have the answer to your question. One is smiling and one is not. Okay, so if you can picture that, we're significantly more likely to approach the person who's smiling. Okay, smiling gives off vibes that we are a friendly person. When I am on Zoom, if it's meeting with somebody, if it's having classes with students, if it's being recorded for a podcast, whatever it is, as soon as I turn my camera on, I am smiling, because that's the first thing I want the other person to see, is I want them to see Steph smiling, because that automatically helps me be perceived as friendly. One of the funny things is when I'm going through and I'm pulling out clips to use of the podcast and YouTube and everything, I am not a big smiler in general. I have a pretty neutral expression on my face most of the time. And when I'm doing the podcast, because I don't script anything ahead of time, I'm just focusing on what I'm thinking and what I'm saying. I'm not focusing on what I look like. And so when I go back to pull clips, it's kind of rough, because I'm typically not smiling. I'm just focusing on what I'm thinking about or what I'm talking about. So I've started making a conscious effort to smile more, so that the clips that I pull, I'm actually smiling. But it's such a little thing that makes a big difference. Just smile. Just smiling. And it doesn't have to be a goofy, over the top, elaborate smile. Just turn the corners of your mouth up a little bit. Just smile. Especially if you're walking into a new situation, somewhere that you've never been before, something that's different, something that you may be feeling a little bit anxious about. Just put a little smile on your face and walk in. Just a little smile. So that's my first little thing that makes a big difference. Smile. This is one of the things that I teach my students as well. Smile. One of the best ways to have a reputation for being friendly is to smile. Again, we do not want dramatic, over the top, elaborate, goofy smiles. Just a little smile on your face. And for some of us, we have to put conscious effort into it, because if we don't think about it, our face is neutral. What some people all refer to it by the initials of RBF, if you know what that means. So some of us have to put a little more effort into it, but just smile makes such a big difference. Okay, the second thing on my list builds on to smiling. In addition to smiling, so smiling would be like phase one. If that's all you're comfortable with, that's all your kiddo is comfortable with, that's phase one. It's so much further from phase 0, where we're not smiling at all. So phase 1 is such a great first step to just start smiling. I also want to share a story while I'm thinking about it. A couple of years ago, I got a call from somebody that I know personally, and he was telling me that in his company, he has an employee that is autistic. And one of the things that has been, I guess, mentioned about this employee is in their place where they work. I guess there's lots of hallways and offices and that kind of thing. And if this employee is walking down the hallway and somebody is coming in the opposite direction, so they're going to cross paths, this employee will duck into the nearest open office, where empty office, and wait for the person to pass, and then they'll come out and continue walking. And the person I was talking to was saying, it's super weird. It makes people think that he's very unfriendly. People feel awkward being in the hallway with him. And my brain immediately knew that what this person is doing is just trying to avoid the awkward social interaction, because he doesn't know how to have a random friendly social interaction like that. So he's just trying to avoid it. That's all he's doing, with zero awareness of how he's coming across to everybody else. zero awareness that everybody else thinks that's super weird. So that's all he's doing, is he's trying to avoid the awkward social interaction, but unfortunately he's creating an even more awkward social interaction. So even if this person were to just keep walking on his path and just smile, not say anything, not do anything, but just keep walking and smile, he would have a significantly different reputation than he does now, just by staying on his path and smiling. It would probably still be a bit weird and awkward, especially if people are trying to greet him or have a discussion. But just smiling would give him a much different reputation than what he has now by ducking into empty offices. Okay, so that's number one, smile. The second one is to simply greet people. Say hello, say hi, whatever you want to say, just greet people. Usually we talk about greeting when we're walking into a new situation. We say hello to people, but this can also be like on the elevator, in the hallway at school, when we walk into class. This can be anywhere. When we had Starfish Social Club in person, I would challenge the kids. We would walk into the waiting room to start class, and there would be 8 students out there who know each other because they're in groups together, and none of them had said hi to each other. Because it's just not a thing that most neurodivergent people do. It's under the category of what I call a social nicety. And so it's something we do to be polite and friendly. And so it's not something that a lot of neurodivergent people do automatically. It's usually something that we do after someone has explained it to us. So just say hello. This doesn't even have to be verbal. You can wave, right? It doesn't even have to be verbal. So if you think about in a classroom in school, if you're in elementary school, it could be when your kiddo walks in the first day, the first time that day, just saying hello to the people who are around him or her, saying hello to the teacher, saying hello to whomever they sit around. And we just have to do it once. It's the first time we see people that day. If your kiddo's in middle school or high school or college, each time they go to a new class, just saying hello. And we don't have to say hello to everybody by name. We do not have to say hello to 28 people. We can walk into that environment, smile, and say hello to whomever we make eye contact with. Or we can do like what I do on Zoom or in the classes when they were live. I would just say hello to everybody as a group. So I would just say, hey guys, happy Tuesday, or hey everybody, welcome back. I'm not talking to anybody in particular, but I'm greeting everybody as a group. Okay, so hey, hello, hi, whatever it is that you want to say, even if nobody responds. Okay, so that's the second little thing that makes a big difference, is just saying hello. Just greeting. So again, if we go back to our example of the guy in the hallway at work, instead of ducking in an empty office, the first step would be for him to just smile at people as they pass. Just smile. And it could be that someone says, I don't know what his name was, but hey, Kevin, how are you? And he just smiles and doesn't respond. That's still a better impression than ducking into an empty office, just smiling. So now imagine if we added phase 2, which is just greeting people. So now imagine that he's walking down the hallway at work. People are passing him. Maybe they're just smiling. Maybe they're smiling and saying, hey, Kevin. Maybe they're saying, hey, how are you? But now imagine phase 2 is he's smiling and he's saying hello. So again, even if people don't respond to our greeting, totally fine. even if somebody asks him how he's doing and he doesn't feel comfortable going to that next level, he can just smile and greet people. He actually doesn't even have to answer that question. That question in our culture is actually pretty rhetorical. It doesn't actually require a response. And so it's not that uncommon for someone to ask another person how they're doing and the other person to just say, hey. It's not that uncommon. It's such a social expectation that it doesn't actually serve its intended purpose anymore, if that makes sense. So imagine this person, instead of ducking into the hallways, they are now smiling at people they pass and possibly greeting them. And imagine how much of a different reputation that gives this person now. These two little things, smiling, saying hello. Okay. And again, we just have to say hello to somebody the first time we see them in that context. So at school, if your kiddo's in elementary school, just the first time they see their classmates, which is, first part of the day. If they go to PE or art class, they can say hello to those teachers just one time. When we have class at Starfish, we just say hello to people one time. Just say hello one time in that context. Okay, so we don't have to say hello to people over and over again. If your kiddo's in middle school or high school, they probably have some of the same people in different classes. They don't have to keep saying hello every time it's a different class to the same person. You can say hello to them the first time they see them that day. And then usually we still acknowledge people, like we might look at them and smile. We don't have to keep saying hello. Just the first time we see somebody in that context that day. That's usually the general expectation. Okay, so there's our first two. Smile, greet. The third one, if we want to take it up one more notch in our quest for having a reputation for being friendly, is some kind of social nicety like, how are you? How's it going? What are you up to? Something like that. How are you doing? What's happening? Something like that. Again, these questions at this point in our culture are pretty rhetorical. We're not actually asking them usually for a response. It's just a social nicety. Okay, so anything that you or your kiddo feels comfortable with, how's it going is a pretty casual, comfortable, kid-friendly thing to say. Hey, how's it going? How are you is pretty typical for adults. How are you? Especially in a situation where we are strangers or acquaintances. How are you? Yeah, how's it going? How are you? What's up is another one for kids. Typically, that's not a big one with adults unless it's somebody we're really friendly with. But what's up would be another good one for kids. So those are our three things. And again, imagine this person walking down the hallway at work. Instead of ducking into an empty office, phase one is he's smiling as he passes people in the hallway. Phase two may be that he's greeting them. He's saying hello or hi. And then phase three is that he's saying, how are you? Right? That would be a really appropriate thing to say in the workplace. How are you? Three little things that would completely change his reputation. A lot of the people that he's passing in the hallway probably don't have a lot to do with him during his workday, meaning they probably work on different things in different places. So this may be his only interaction with them throughout the day. And so we've now changed from his only interaction being something super weird and awkward to being something super low key and expected and friendly. Even if he's only doing the first one, which is smiling. So all three go a really long way, but even if he's just smiling and greeting. Okay, so all of those. I do want to add, because I just had this mental picture, this image in my head. I do want to add, I personally do not care at all about eye contact. Eye contact brings in a lot of visual stimulation. And for those of us who get overstimulated, making eye contact with somebody and trying to talk to them at the same time can be really overwhelming. I find that I don't maintain eye contact when I'm talking to people because it's too much stimulation coming in, and I will get off track with what I'm trying to say, or I'll have a hard time listening. So I don't care about eye contact, but I do think when we're greeting people, for in that instance, making eye contact is pretty important because it helps them know that we're talking to them. Otherwise, we really don't know who somebody's talking to. So it helps them know that we're talking to them. And it makes our smile more personal toward that person. So again, in the general rule, I don't care about eye contact, and I don't teach my kids to give eye contact. It can actually be really detrimental to their social conversational skills. If they're being required to maintain eye contact, it can actually really tank their ability to have a conversation. But I do think when we're saying hello and greeting people and saying, how are you? That would be an ideal time to look at somebody. And then we can look away after that. But I'm just thinking about our person walking down the hallway at work, looking at somebody, smiling, saying hello, saying how are you, and then completely going about his day. And how much just that would change his reputation from weird to friendly. He's not at any point having a conversation with somebody. He's not having to maintain a conversation. He's not having to maintain eye contact. He's not having to keep up with all the complexities of conversation skills, but just those things: smiling, saying hello, and some kind of social nicety like, how's it going? How are you? What's up? Right? Depending on how old you are in the context, would make such a big difference in the way that he's perceived by other people. And as I mentioned earlier, we are all much more likely to want to talk to people that we perceive as friendly, to ask for help from people that we perceive as friendly, to want to be around people that we perceive as friendly. Even things like, if you imagine an elevator. I was at a conference a week ago, and so it was interesting. I thought about doing a whole episode just on all the social things that went on at this conference. But even in an elevator, if you get on an elevator, or if you're already there and someone else gets on, we're much more comfortable engaging with them if they're smiling, if they seem friendly, or if they get on and they say something like, hey, how's it going? Right? Or if we get on and they're like, oh, hey, what floor? Right? We're much more likely to engage with someone when they seem friendly, versus if we get on an elevator and everybody's looking down at their phone and nobody says anything and nobody's smiling. Or if we're already on the elevator and a person gets on and never looks at us and just turns around awkwardly and we're just standing there. So everybody is much more likely to want to talk to people that they perceive as friendly, to want to see that person again, to want to engage with that person again. There's even at the gym that I used to go to, there were people that never had a conversation with them, but every time we would make eye contact, we would both smile and say hello. Never had a conversation with them. I don't know their name. I don't know anything about them, but it then becomes habitual. Then every time I see that person, we smile and say hello, because now we both have a reputation for being friendly. All right. That is it for our conversation this week about the 3 little things that can make a big difference, plus our conversation about strangers. you can see how doing these things with people we don't know is actually really good practice, because all of these things are totally appropriate for people we don't know. Totally appropriate to smile and say hello to someone that we don't know. We can do that anywhere and everywhere. Again, we're not sharing personal information. We're not even having a conversation. We're just being friendly. And so sometimes this is much easier to practice with people that we don't know, because we don't have to worry about what they think about us or how they're going to react or respond. We will never see them again. And there's so many opportunities to practice this with people we don't know, at the grocery store, anytime we're out in public, at school, when we're passing people, when we're in the cafeteria, at work. There's just so many opportunities to practice these things with people that we don't know. And if it all seems a bit overwhelming, just start with one. The very first one is smile. Just start with that. And when you start to feel comfortable with smiling, now we can start to greet people. And then you can just stop there, smile and greet people. And then once you feel comfortable with that, now you can start to add a social nicety. So it's not all or nothing. You can just start with the first one. Just start with smiling. All right. Thank you for being here. I'm really glad that you're here, and I'll see you again next time.